Johann Sleeden and the Protestant Vision of History by Alexandra Kess recounts how the Protestant view of history came to be and Johann Sleeden's involvement. The introduction in large part establishes why Kess decided to write this book. She feels Sleeden's contribution has often been diminished by historians in the past. She establishes this by going through the work that has previously been done and pointing out those historians' miscomings. In the first chapter, Kess does a short biography on Sleeden's early life and education because she believes there is no way to understand Sleeden's work and impact without understanding where he came from. She also begins to talk about the connections Sleeden makes in France. These connections will later become important in his work and a crux of his success. Chapter 2 recounts Sleeden's move back to Germany from France, describing how his existing connections afforded him easy transition and then later on important roles in Germany's attempt to kickstart the Reformation in their country. This chapter also begins Sleeden's task of writing an official Protestant history. She will go on to talk about how his dedication to his work continued even after the league that sponsored him broke up. The third chapter continues to recount Sleeden's life. This time, Kess focused on his success as a historian writing about French figures in Latin, despite his German roots and living in Germany at the time. Kess states that Sleeden work was reprinted for hundreds of years after his death, yet Sleeden himself got lost in the history books. In the fourth chapter, Kess focuses on Sleeden's work, going over methodology, content, and sources. She argues that he represents a modern historian due to his emphasis on evidence and the shift from church-centered histories to state-centered histories. In fact, Kess has a quote from Sleeden saying, "I have studiously collected what I have written here from public records and papers, the faith of which can justly be called into question by no man." He was fiercely dedicated to the pursuit of truth and impartiality. This came through in his inclusion of both church and state. He believed that without state history there was no religious history, and without religious history there was no state history. In the final two chapters, Kess speaks about the race for a German print of Sleeden's work, as his work was only originally printed in Latin. Subsequently, she also speaks of the many copies that were produced. Kess then moves on to talk about the many predecessors Sleeden had in Germany. As for his impact in France, Kess says that the reception was overwhelming. People didn't have the same personal connection to Sleeden's work as they were not German, but they still all wanted a copy. Finally, she describes the long-term impact Sleeden had on French historiography. So why does any of this matter? And how does Alexandra Kess's work fit in a historiography class? Firstly, the story of Sleeden's histories is characteristic of everything we have seen before. Historians always seem to think they are doing things better and getting to the real truth in a way previous historians haven't. Just as many other histories Sleeden wrote in response to histories he disagreed with, or more generally, the Protestant leaders disagreed with. Finally, Sleeden's story shows how history modernized over time, how it shifted and became professionalized. This is shown simply by the fact that he was hired to write a history. However, this is not the only way the book fits into historiography. Alexandra Kess herself is a fine example. Throughout the book, she comments about how everyone else has gotten it wrong. They haven't studied Sleeden enough, and what they have done is full of half-truths, often based on hearsay rather than sound research. She makes a judgment about the past and how people have studied him. We have seen this time and time again. historians attacking other historians as false or wrong. In a way, I think this is what history is, a series of reactions to historians' work because it wasn't done right, or because we can do it better now.